All right, so let's look at the willow tree, right? As it says, by the willow trees, we hung our instruments. So let's, just so I don't mess up the words, let's see here.
The most recognizable willow varieties, such as the weeping willow, Salix babylonica, and the florist's willow, Salix caprea, the pussy willow branches sold in shops, are actually native to Europe or Asia, but there are nearly 40 species of willows native to New England alone.
Okay. Right there. That's Salix babylonica. There it is, right? Babylon has its own willow tree. So let's look at this, right? All right. Watch this. Let's see here. Oh.
Salix babylonica, Babylon willow or weeping willow, Chinese, Hui Lu, pinyin, Hui Lu, is a species of willow native to dry areas of northern China, but cultivated for millennia elsewhere in Asia. Being traded along the Silk Road to Southwest Asia and Europe. 2, 3.
Okay. It's native to the dry areas of northern China. So, where would it be indigenous to? But cultivated for millennia elsewhere. See, now they're being slick because they don't want to tell you elsewhere, because then it will tell you the location of Babylon. Look at that. But at least we know this thing is Asian in origin. Let's see.
Salix babylonica was described and named scientifically by Carolus Linnaeus in 1736. Who knew the species as the pendulous branched, weeping variant, then recently introduced into the Clifford Garden in Hardekamp in the Netherlands. 5.
So that doesn't answer much. It doesn't tell us why this person called it that, though. After Babylonica, or however you pronounce that. See, that's what we want to know. Why would this person decide to give it that name? Is that specific? Let's see.
Early Chinese cultivar selections include the original weeping willow, Salix babylonica, pendula, in which the branches and twigs are strongly pendulous, which was presumably spread along ancient trade routes. 5. These distinctive trees were subsequently introduced into England from Aleppo in northern Syria in 1736, and have rapidly become naturalized, growing well along rivers and in parks. These plants are all females, readily propagated vegetatively, and capable of hybridizing with various other kinds of willows, but not breeding true from seed. This type of tree is grown very easily through plant propagation.
See, because now that I go back to the Conan the Barbarian cartoon, right? When Seth was released by the sorcerer, he sets up his kingdom in Babylon in the cartoon. But here was the part that threw me off. It made me stop and say, what's really going on here? When he set up his kingdom in Babylon, he's in his castle, and as Conan and his companions go to the castle, I can't remember why they were going there. I think they were trying to get the sorcerer that freed him. What happened there? Oh, they show the castle, but then they show the Great Wall of China running along the land behind his castle. And I was like, well, isn't that interesting? Why would they depict Babylon being in China along the Great Wall? So, I mean, this makes sense, but it still leaves questions, new questions now. Specifically, I want to know why did this person pick this name for this plant? Like, what was the inspiration? Because he did it from something. And then where was this originally from? Not Northern Africa, but where? Not Africa, I'm sorry. Northern Asia.
A similar willow species also native to northern China, Salix matsudana, Chinese willow, is now included in Salix babylonica as a synonym by many botanists, including the Russian willow expert Alexei Skvortsov. 5.7. The only reported difference between the two species is S. matsudana has 2 nectaries in each female flower, whereas S. babylonica has only 1. However, this character is variable in many willows. For example, crack willow, Salix times fragilis, can have either 1 or 2. So even this difference may not be taxonomically significant. 7. A horticultural variant with twisted twigs and trunk, the corkscrew willow, S. matsudana var. tortuosa, is widely planted.
Look there. Wow. Look at that. Look at that. Look at that. Look at that.
Peking willow is a popular ornamental tree in northern China, and is also grown for wood production and shelter belts there, being particularly important around the oases of the Gobi Desert. Protecting agricultural land from desert winds. Citation needed.
The Gobi Desert. Oh my goodness. Oh, now look. Oh, they're gonna say this. This is why you could have named any of the species. Wait. You could have named any of the species of willows in China or in Asia, the Babylonia or whatever it's called there. But you're choosing the one.
The epithet babylonica in this Chinese species' scientific name, S. babylonica, as well as the related common names, Babylon willow, or Babylon weeping willow, derive from a misunderstanding by Linnaeus that this willow was the tree described in the Bible in the opening of Psalm chapter 137, here in Latin and English translations.
See, that sounds like one of those cover your butt excuses. That's what that sounds like. Because you could have named any of these trees. You could have named any of them. And when you think about it, who would be looking for a Babylon tree in Asia if Babylon was supposed to be in Iraq? Right? So you're naming a tree that's here in Asia and is important to the Gobi Desert. You're naming it that when you could have picked any of the ones where they say in Europe, the species that are found in Europe. You could have named any of them Babylonia, right? You could have found some in Iraq and said, hey, this is the Babylonia, but you chose this one next that's important to the Gobi Desert, right? And named it that. So yeah, that sounds like someone writing in something to cover their tail to try to throw you off throw you off the path. That's what that sounds like. So let's continue. We're almost done. See what it says.
From the Clementine Vulgate, Latin, 1592. We sat there on the rivers of Babylon and wept when we remembered Zion. On the willows in the midst of it we hang our organs. Here, Salibus is the dative plural of the Latin noun salix, the willows, used by Linnaeus as the name for the willow genus Salix.
Okay, so what's the big deal? Let's see.
Despite these biblical references to willows, whether in Latin or English, the trees growing in Babylon along the Euphrates River in ancient Mesopotamia, modern Iraq, and named Gareb in early Hebrew, are not willows, salix, in either the modern or the classical sense, but the Euphrates poplar, Populus euphratica, with willow-like leaves on long, drooping shoots, in the related genus Populus. 6, 7. Both Populus and Salix are in the plant family Salicaceae. The willow family. These Babylonian trees are correctly called poplars, not willows, in the New International Version of the Bible, English, 1978.
I wonder what eSword says. I mean, I can't use eSword. It won't let me because I have an Android, and I don't have my own personal laptop or desktop, so it'll be interesting to find out what eSword has for that translation. But I still think they're just trying to cover, so it throws you off the trail of where Babylon really is. That's all that sounds like. So, there was something else, right? So I was going back through Jeremiah because I believe it's in Jeremiah, where I was reading that Jeremiah was trying to warn the Israelites of the Babylonians coming. Because I believe it was something, because it's still in my mind, it was something to the effect of Babylon was coming in ships. And what was it? The Egyptians were coming to help them. The Egyptians were coming in ships, and the Babylonians were on land, right? And the trick was going to be that the Babylonians would pretend to leave when they seen the ships of the Egyptians arriving. And that was what Jeremiah was trying to warn the king of Babylon, that they're going to pretend to leave, but really just stay back. And when the Egyptians then leave, that's when the Babylonians would come and attack. I don't know why I remember it that way. So I've been trying to find out, this so I can see if I'm remembering it correctly or if I'm remembering it wrong. And I'm using this Duene version, right? And I've never heard his name pronounced this way, this king of Babylon, right? Because then it made me think, is this with the whole, you'll see. Hold on.
1. The word that came to Jeremiah is from the Lord in the 10th year of Sedecius king of Judah, the same as 18th year of Nabuchodonosor.
Nabuchodonosor? Have you ever heard his name pronounced Nabuchodonosor? Because I'll tell you how the King James version does it, right? They do Nebuchadnezzar, right? Yeah, look. Nebuchadnezzar. Hold on.
Nebuchadrezzar.
Oh. There we go. So my question is, how are we getting two different ways of saying this guy's name? Like, why isn't there a definitive way to say his name? And then it started making me think, why do we really push dinosaurs down everybody's throat at such a young age? Like, what's that about, right? Pause for a moment. And here we go. All right, I'll have to do it this way.
The Babylonian form of the name is Nabuchodonosor, the second part of which is variously interpreted. O Nebo, defend my crown, or tiara, empire, landmark, work. The original has been more or less defaced in the Hebrew, Greek, and Latin transliterations, from which are derived the modern English forms, Nabuchodonosor, Nebuchadnezzar, and Nebuchadrezzar. On the whole, Nabuchodonosor appears to be nearer to the original Babylonian pronunciation than Nebuchadrezzar and especially Nebuchadnezzar, A.V. Ezra chapter 2 verse 1, taken from the Masoretic transliteration, and would be still nearer if the R were restored to the second element where N has crept in. 2 kings of this name are known to have ruled over Babylon.
Also, Nabuchodonosor, I guess the Catholics are saying is the closest to the name. That's what like I said, that was new to me. I'm like, okay, so are we talking about this king? And then I realized something. I'll play this last part here.
The most famous monarch of the dynasty of Pashi or Izen. A prince of untiring energy, he led to victory the Chaldean armies east and west, against the Lulubi, Elam, and Syria. And although twice defeated by the Assyrian king, Ashur-resh-ishi, succeeded in arresting for a time the decay of the First Babylonian Empire. See Babylonia, 2, 183.
I realized something, right? I was like, wait a minute. Don't they have an apocrypha story about Daniel and the dragon?
Apocrypha. This is from the edition of the Greek text, which is the New English translation of the Septuagint. Bel and the Dragon. From a prophecy of Habakkuk, the son of Jesus of the tribe of Levi, there was a certain person, a priest, whose name was Daniel, son of Habal, a companion of the king of Babylon. And there was an idol, Bel, which the Babylonians would revere. Now every day they were squandering on it 12 bushels of choice flour, and 4 sheep, and 6 measures of oil. And the king would revere him, and the king would go every day, and would do obeisance to him. But Daniel would pray to the Lord. And the king said to Daniel, "Why do you not do obeisance to Bel?" And Daniel said to the king, "I revere no one except the Lord God, who created heaven and earth." So the king said to him, "Is this one, then, not a god? Do you not see how much is spent for him every day?" And Daniel said to him, "Not at all. Do not let anyone mislead you, for this one is only of clay inside and bronze outside. Moreover, I swear to you by the Lord God of the gods that this one has never eaten anything." And angered, the king called the leaders of the temple and said to them, "Produce the one who eats the things prepared for Bel, but if not, you shall die." Or Daniel, who says they are not being eaten by him. But they said, "It is Bel himself who eats them." Then Daniel said to the king, "Let it be so. Unless I prove that Bel is not eating them, I shall die, and all those with me." Now there were 70 priests of Bel, not counting wives and children. So he brought the king into the idol's temple. And the food was set out in the presence of the king and Daniel, and the mixed wine was brought in and set out before Bel. And Daniel said, "You yourself see, O king, that these things are set down. You then seal the bolts of the shrine when it is closed." Now the word pleased the king. Now Daniel commanded those with him, after everyone departed from the temple, to strew the whole shrine with ashes, though no one else except him knew. And then, as he sealed the shrine, he commanded that it be sealed with the king's signet, and with the signets of certain illustrious priests. And so it happened. And it happened on the next day that they went to the place, but the priests of Bel, after entering through false doors, had eaten everything laid out for Bel, and had drunk the wine. And Daniel said, "Men, priests, examine your seals whether they remain. And you also, O king, observe carefully lest anything be out of order to you." And they found the seal as it was, and they broke the seal. And when they opened the doors, they saw everything that had been set out consumed, and the tables empty. And the king was thrilled and said to Daniel, Bel is great, and there is no deceit in him." And Daniel laughed exceedingly, and said to the king, "Come, see the deceit of the priests." And Daniel said, "O king, these footprints, whose are they?" And the king said, "Of men and women and children." And he went to the house where the priests were staying, and they found Bel's food and the wine. And Daniel showed the king the false doors through which the priests would enter, and consume what was set out for Bel. And the king brought them out of Bel's temple, and handed them over to Daniel. And he gave the provision that was for him to Daniel, but he destroyed Bel. And there was a dragon in that same place, and the Babylonians would revere it. And the king said to Daniel, "Surely you shall not also say about this one that he is bronze. Look, he lives and eats and drinks. Do obeisance to him." And Daniel said, "O king, give me permission, and I will slay the dragon without iron or club." And the king agreed with him and said, "I have given it to you." And taking 30 minas of pitch and fat and hair, Daniel boiled them together, and having made a cake, he threw it into the mouth of the dragon. And after eating, it burst open, and he showed it to the king, saying, "Aren't these the things you revere, O king?" And all those from the country assembled against Daniel and said, "The king has just now become a Judean. He has destroyed Bel and killed the dragon." And when the king saw that the crowd from the country had united against him, he called his companions and said, "I am giving Daniel over for destruction." Now there was a pit in which 7 lions would be fed, to which the conspirators of the king would be delivered, and every day 2 bodies condemned to death would be provided for them. And the crowd threw Daniel into that pit so that he might be devoured, and not even have the good fortune of a burial. And Daniel was in the pit 6 days. And it happened on the 6th day, and Habakkuk was having bread broken in a bowl of boiled soup, and a jar of mixed wine, and was on his way to the plain to the reapers. And an angel of the Lord spoke to Habakkuk, saying, "This is what God says to you. The food that you have, take it to Daniel, the one of Balthazar, in the lion's pit in Babylon." And Habakkuk said, "Lord God, I have not seen Babylon, and I do not know where the pit is." And when the angel of the Lord had taken Habakkuk by the hair of his head, he set him down above the pit that was in Babylon. And Habakkuk said to Daniel, "Rise, eat the food that God has sent you." And Daniel said, "For the Lord God, who does not forsake those who love him, has remembered me." And Daniel ate. Then the angel of the Lord put Habakkuk whence he took him on that same day. Now the Lord God remembered Daniel. Now after these things the king came out mourning Daniel. And when he stooped down into the pit, he saw him seated. And when he had shouted out, the king said, "The Lord God is great, and there is no other besides him." And the king brought Daniel out from the pit, and threw into the pit those responsible for his ruin before Daniel, and they were devoured.